Meeting's called to order. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the February 8th and the March. They get the date. I think that was the 8th as well. Craig sent out the meeting minutes yesterday for March, and I resent out the ones for February, which I don't think we approved last month. Right. So does anybody have any comments, questions, or even one of the minutes for the last two meetings?
No.
Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of both meetings. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Joan seconds it. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes unanimously, and Craig will leave it to you to get them to Denise to get them posted on the website.
Okay, I'll give it to Denise, not Sandra.
Should go to Denise Smith.
Okay.
To my knowledge, yes, to the clerk. Sandra has better things to do. And number two, most important of the evening. To be argued by somebody. Treasurer's report.
Oh, well, hearing no changes in our finances, it remains the same as it was last month. Historical Commission expense account is 1,000, and our donation fund is $917.17.
Pretty good.
How much was I going to repeat?
$917.17.
Okay.
If you're on those pennies, they could change.
Yeah.
And I believe we covered last meeting that the two individuals that contributed to the historical review of the Governor's Landing project mailed checks and
Yes.
both received.
Yes, they did.
I understand that the second party received the first check a day or two after stop payment had been put on it.
Oh, really? I did not hear
So he
that.
did eventually get that check.
Isn't
It
that-
took weeks for him to get that
Weeks,
check.
months, I think.
Typical US Postal Service.
Is this Chris Rock?
Yeah, Jim Rock.
Jim Rock.
Rock's okay.
Is he some musical person?
That was a Craig joke.
Okay.
He did that on purpose. Okay, item number 3 on the agenda. We have been asked by the Historic Society that they give us a short presentation on future use of the Milton Ristine building. I received an email about 30 minutes ago from our town manager asking why it was being presented to us and not the selectmen, and I explained to him that they were presenting here to seek our support and were definitely intending to request a meeting with the selectmen to present to them. So I will tell you that, so that you are aware. And I would ask that we keep this to no more than 15 minutes, because you have presented in depth, I think back in December or January, concerns about the building. So why don't you take the floor, Tom or Ellen, or whoever wants to, and tell us what's on your mind.
Well, after 3 or 4 iterations, the board sent a letter that they agreed represented their opinions and ideas, and I will read it, and then I will hand out copies for discussion. The subject is recommendation for the future use of the Knowlton Ristine building. The Historical Society Board of Directors wish the selectmen and town manager will seriously consider retaining and refurbishing the Knowlton Ristine building, both as the permanent home of the Upton Historical Museum and Historical Archives Library, as well as a place for meeting, offices, and storage. We believe the society and museum can best serve the town by remaining part of the central downtown area of Upton. The board recommends the first floor be used for an expanded museum, historical research library, and displays of artwork from the collection and local artists. The Historical Society believes an expanded museum and research center will attract the public, serve the citizens of Upton, and be a focal point for Upton Center. The Historical Society is prepared to invest its assets and conduct fundraising to support the development of an expanded museum. The Town Historical Commission have supported the museum and society for the last 50 years as it collected, preserved, displayed, and made available for research a large collection of archives, documents, reports, early photographs, old maps, artifacts, documenting the 288-year history of Upton. The pictures that line the walls of Town Hall, Elm Park, and the preservation of the stone chamber, the inclusion of Town Hall, historic districts, and Civilian Conservation Corps resources in the National Register of Historic Places are testaments to work that town and society have done. This legacy is especially important as the town's 300th anniversary approaches. Volunteers at the Upton Museum have provided research assistance to town officials, the public, and the media for information about Upton history and families. All of this has been done by volunteers, saving time for town officials who referred inquiries to us. Now is not the time to give this significant town asset scant attention or relegate it to an obscure location. The society is willing and prepared to invest their financial and human assets and to conduct fundraising to support a visionary space that will draw the public, properly reflect and promote the fascinating history of Upton, and serve as an attractive focal point in the center of town. You are encouraged to visit the museum and view the extent of the collection and see the steps that have been taken to preserve and document Upton's heritage. A visit time can be arranged upon request. We welcome the opportunity to discuss these ideas with you. Respectfully, signed by board members. I still have copies.
Thank you.
Sounds like one would have thought would do it.
Mhm.
It's off the data back and forth.
I think I saw an early draft and
Yeah.
this is much changed from the early draft, so kudos to the group that put this together.
And today I went into the museum after being away for 3 months, and Tom and whoever else have kind of moved things around and
Change the
things up
displays.
a little bit to change the displays. I walked in, I went, wow, this looks amazing. I mean, it really looks very nice. And I'm sure anybody who has never been in there before would come in and be very pleased with what they saw.
The Ellen Gay took it upon herself to
You mean?
push Linda.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Linda Gay took it upon herself to push for a Mass Cultural Council grant. So she and I put it together, and I had been putting it off for years because it's just something I'd never done and never seemed to have the time. But with her pushing me, we put it together and was awarded $1,500. And that money is being spent for preservation materials, boxes, display material, and so forth. And we're in the process. A lot of material that was laying out in the open or loose in file cabinets is now organized in boxes. And in addition to that, over the last, it's probably been at least 3 years, we've been conducting a program of cataloging all the documents and books and materials, not focusing on objects, but the paper materials and books and drawings and photographs. And we have put together an inventory of all that material. And for a lot of it, we've indexed the material. Like we had 3 file cabinets full of material in hanging folders. They're now all in bindings and it's all indexed. So if there's anything in there, you can run a search through the index. It'll tell you right what drawer, what book, what page to find it on. So that's been a big help. I use it quite a lot there. But back to the letter. The reason we're being here is, would you support us when we present this? Do you feel that there's things that you think should be added or changed? This is the opportunity to make suggestions.
The only thing that I saw that I thought might be a good point to put in is the education of our children. As we every year have hosted the third grade field trip because their curriculum is about town history, and they come down to the town hall and they have a mock town meeting and learn how people vote for issues in a town meeting and how our government works within the town. And then they come over to the historical museum and tour that to see, things about their history. I typically give a little talk on the schools and how children were educated back in the 1800s. And then they also go and visit the town library, which this year will be in the new one. But I think that that's a very important part of what we do to educate. And I didn't see that word used in this letter at all.
Okay, it's valid, yes. Put that in on next go around.
Mhm.
I see you removed commentary about moving to the first floor, moving the museum to the first floor. And I assume that was
No, it
probably
says here.
not intentional.
The board recommends the first floor to be used.
Did I miss that?
Yes,
The second paragraph.
no, it's there.
For an expanded museum, rather than moving to the first floor.
Yeah.
Freeing up the space on the second, third floors or whatever.
Well, the intent of wording it that way was to make a better museum, not necessarily occupy both.
In other words, you're talking about the museum public space
Yeah.
that people come into downstairs and then reserving upstairs for storage and maybe office space or something.
No, I didn't want to give the impression we're going to just take the museum that we have as is and put it downstairs. I'm trying to give the impression or indicate that we're going to build a new, better looking museum downstairs. And you could give up space upstairs.
Do we say that explicitly so that
No,
maybe we should, so that they get the impression that we're wanting to build something new, updated?
I don't think it's necessary that we say that.
Well,
Yeah.
the
Would they be impressed if we're kind of upgrading
I
things?
think expanded, if you say expanded
expanded.
Yeah,
museum.
expanded means that you're going to use.
Upgraded?
Expanded, upgraded, upgraded,
Yeah,
expanded museum. and research
suggests one
center.
thing.
Expanded also means implying.
Giving up
things.
space on the second floor suggests another thing.
Oh,
Go ahead, Patrick.
Sorry, hi everyone.
Hi.
If you say expand, that also kind of implies. I mean, Tom, I know you said it eloquently about where, there's a lot of just that energy. And when that's put in there, that really pushes the idea that this is our time. And especially with that energy pushing the momentum, that really just gets the attention. Be like, oh wow, look at that. Like, here we go.
This is the comment from our town manager to me a half hour ago. I think it's appropriate to read it here. He says, I know the board has said, the board being the Board of Selectmen, has said they don't want to make any changes until we identify a plan for the building. Too many open questions that need to be examined and answered. No context to what's behind. I've heard things over the last year, but That's just the concern, but I think I was the one that stuck my head in your meeting last month and said, why don't you just push for moving downstairs to see where it takes you?
Yeah.
And I'm definitely in favor of you making that presentation to the
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen and Town Manager saying, the library's moved out, building is half empty now, and we'd just like to expand our exposure to the first floor and to the public. And push for the Museum Historic Society and get more interest from townspeople over the next year before they're able to develop some other concept for that building.
I think to them too, that a plan, the building should include looking at what we need maybe over the next 5 to 10 years as a town. We have real estate, we have a building, we have 2 buildings, and how can we use them instead of getting rid of them now? You can only get rid of them once.
And I know as you sit on the EDC, how long has that discussion been going on?
Discussion concerning,
We have a church that's empty. We have a Milton Rustine building that's going to be half empty shortly. And how long has that discussion been going on? What do we do with it?
probably 10 years now.
So that weighed into my thoughts of push for what you think you want and what you need. I don't see why we can't support it here. And they're the ultimate vote at the end of the day, or they're the ultimate guide to send it to town floor to say, what do the townspeople think about all of this?
That, it would be important for us as our group to make a physical presence at the meeting when Tom presents his letter. To show that, not just as a word, a vote was taken and the commission said that they were backing you, but for us to show up in person there.
Yeah, I think that's really what I would.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think I'd just like to say too, I think the paragraph where you comment the town and historical commission have supported it for the last 50 years. I moved to town in 73, joined society in 74, which is when they were making plans to move into the Rustine, but it says historical commission on the door. And it's always been the commission space, but the society has maintained the museum and did exactly what this letter says. So I think maybe some of the selectmen or people in power don't really realize how long the association has been. So I think it's important to capitalize on that.
I think I have a concern to some extent on the effort that Linda Gay is putting forth on the citizens petition. Exchanged a couple emails with her a few weeks ago in one of her lengthy publications on her position. And I asked why she had the word leased in her. She does not want the building to be leased. I said, I didn't say to her, but I would say here, it seems to me by putting a citizen position on a town meeting floor to put whatever you call it in place, if the townspeople were to vote on it, that the building never be sold or leased, must be kept as town property. It would seem to me it's putting a huge constraint on the selectmen and what they are able to do. And that if you lease a building, you still own it. You can throw the lessee out anytime you want per written agreement. And added to that, the fact that what Craig just said, that this discussion's been going on for years about what do we do with these buildings. Doesn't seem to me we're any closer to a solution to what we do with the buildings, other than saying let's expand or move the Historic Society Museum into a more prominent position than the building we have. Wouldn't be a bad thing.
2 things I'd like to say to that is in 2000, I was part of a committee, capital infrastructure committee, that looked at the town, every committee, every board, everything, their needs down the road. And we came up with priorities. But I think at this point in time, after the discussion's been going on without a real focus, I think maybe there needs to be a committee that focuses on that type of thing again. It's been 23 years or more since we've done that, and interview every board and what are your projected needs.
Well, I think they're close to that. When I last talked to the town manager, he was talking along those lines. But as far as, the buildings go, you do have to remember that the town approved renovation of the town hall. So that was a big step. And that had to do with, to do with the building. And some people wanted to get rid of it, retained, and so the other opposite
This
is,
feels like you're talking about.
yes,
Yeah.
right? The opposite happened when, I don't recall the details, but, an item got put on the warrant to purchase Holy Angels Church, and the town approved it. But, I think they stepped into murky places with that, because now the town has it, and they didn't have the money to do anything with it or refurbish it. So I agree with you that we can't take flexibility away from the selectmen. We have to, if there's something that says that this building is going to be retained, then it should have dollars and cents with it, and the voters should approve that money at the time that the plans are
Well,
not left up in the air.
I did sign that petition, but I made it clear, the person that signed me up, is that the reason I'm signing it is I feel like, let's take a breather and think. And I don't want to put an end date on it, because I feel like, I feel like, okay, let's take a breath, save it, and then have the selectmen form this committee that it seems they're close to. And then at some point, if they feel really they've identified there really isn't a need for it, and not going to be a need, then the selectmen can put a warrant to take back control instead of leaving it there forever.
I think to your point that if you approve a citizen's position to never sell a building, and you put a position forward on what you want to do with the Knowlton Ristine building, you've got the church, the Knowlton Ristine. To say you want to keep the building, to me, automatically says you're going to spend tax dollars on it at some point. And to put petition forward without stating that is the wrong position to the townspeople. You've got to say, this means we're going to spending $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million on this building over the next 10 to 20 years. Otherwise, there's no sense of keeping it.
Right.
Because the church's structure is sound, the Knowlton Ristine building's structure is sound. The floor bearing capacity of both buildings is severely limited, which limits what you can use either building for.
Well, when they did the study of the Ristine building, the study was for the library
Right.
and the loading of the books. But if you read that report, and it says it was standard office space, it was probably adequate.
Right. And after that,
I read the report and read
Right.
the weight bearing loading that the architects or the engineers put into those reports.
Yeah.
Which limits it for a lot of purposes, doesn't limit it to have open office spaces and things like that, but.
Yeah.
But the point I want to make is that either the citizens petition or move to say we want to expand or move to the first floor, we want to keep the building, should automatically tell people that tax dollars will be spent on these buildings going forward.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. And without stating that, you wind up with some of what Linda states, which is valid, that we've held that building for 75 years since BBT did all its renovations, and almost no money's been spent on it at all
50 years.
since the 70s, so 50 years.
So windows, roof, some work, but not everything. Okay, well, I
But
think
aside from
the
the
15 minutes is up.
Yeah.
Ed?
We should make a vote.
One
Ed,
quick
can
question.
you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, it's Linda. I'm sorry, I raised my hand, but I didn't know if you had anyone who is watching the meter.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I wasn't.
Craig's taking notes. I wanted to interject, and I'm sorry I couldn't see how far you were going to go on this the petition, but I'll let you know now. I'm penning a letter to Joe. I was, and then I jumped on this meeting, but I'm going to be pulling the petition. I won't go into all the details now. I'll write something on growing pains, and I'll send out a letter to the people that are on my mailing list. But I am pulling the petition after speaking with David Loper on a number of things that I did not realize would potentially put my intention, which is, as you suggest, I think that everyone in that room knows that my intention is only to not see the building developed by someone other than the community. And that although I didn't specifically speak to the cost related to that, I was really trying to stay in a little bit narrower lane because I didn't go out and get, 3 bids on everything. And I wasn't planning on doing that, and thought that would be the next step. But I, as much as I see that people might view that as a unknown burden, I also know from my research that the history of the building, even though it does not look like the church, is very important history, and that the building is eligible in it for a number of reasons to become a historic property. And so anyway, so after speaking with David and, not being aware of all the possible things that people could stand up and turn the petition into, which would really disappoint me, I'm going to pull it. So you know that, no one else knows that. I'm sending Joe a letter tonight to make him aware, but I'm disappointed because I don't want the intent to be either misunderstood or diminished. But I don't think that taking it to town meeting is going to be the right thing for my intention or for, the history of the town broadly. So anyway, I just want to let you guys know that. So you didn't spend a lot more time on that. And I'm sorry I didn't let you know sooner in this conversation.
Thank you, Linda. This is Ed Phillips again. I just want to add that I think within the scope of the architectural engineering report that was done in 2018 or 19, there are cost numbers in there that could be rough enough numbers for you to use at any future point when discussing what might need to be invested in that building without having to go out and getting, like you said, 3 bids, which is probably not your place or not the thing to do, certainly at this point. So I'm not against the town saving that building. I just wanted to make a point that we don't want to tie the selectmen's hands with what they can possibly do with it to help the town and to bring some more value to downtown Upton. So just with that thought, Helen, go ahead.
Linda, I just want to ask you, are you going to pull it or pass over it? There's a difference, and you should talk to David if you don't know.
It won't be on the floor that night, so I'm not sure, what the language will be.
If
But I'll
Warren,
find it out.
if Warren is closed, I think you can't pull it at this point. You can pass over it.
Okay.
Passing over doesn't kill it. It's something you could bring back in the future, like within a year. Otherwise, I think you have to wait a year before you can bring it back. So that may be something you'd want to discuss with Joe or David to understand the difference.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good.
Good point.
So I think the request is that, and I'll make a motion that asks us to vote whether we are in favor of supporting the Historic Society's letter and proposal being submitted to the Board of Selectmen and Town Manager for further consideration. Second.
A second.
I'm going to do a poll on this one. Craig, are you opposed or against? Opposed or in favor? It's in favor. Russ, opposed or in favor?
In favor.
Don?
In favor.
Patrick?
In favor.
And Joe?
In favor.
And I'm going to abstain. I have 4 against. All right. Thank you very much for your consideration. Make those modifications to the letter. And do you
Just a
think you'll be asking the Sandra of the town manager to be put in front of the selectmen anytime soon? Before the town meeting or after the town meeting?
Hopefully before the town meeting.
Doesn't leave you much time.
No. But if I wait till after, there'll be just too much turmoil that has to be dealt with.
Selectmen meet every Tuesday, every other Tuesday. That's what I thought, twice a month. Yeah, so you haven't got much time at all.
So they met last night?
Did they?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
No.
I don't.
You might want to include in the letter that, the historical commission tasked the vote to support the letter.
I don't know, they didn't indicate that they wanted to do that. They just voted on the letter as it is.
Well, I think.
We
they
voted on
voted
being
to
in favor of what you're doing. And the vote passed by majority vote, so.
Yeah. So
But
does
that's
that,
something that, you know, when we get before the selectmen and they ask for your opinion, you can say that, but I don't think us telling them that is the right approach.
agreed.
You don't see any reason why you can't say, remember the historical commission, and they voted in favor of, in support of moving the museum and occupying the building until some better land comes along. Absolutely.
They might want to know that the historical commission supports this on a loan.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Especially if some of you were there at the meeting, showing your support.
Keep us advised. We'd be happy to show up.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Agenda item number 4. I think we can run through these real quickly. Heritage Park sign update. Greg, do you have anything to add, change?
Just that I'm excited that Blackstone Valley said that they would, hand carve the letters, which I think is gonna make it, artistically interesting and, look similar to what we had previously, so I'm glad that they said that they would do that. I'm excited. So I don't know what the next step is.
I would think, and I would add that I think you and I should meet with BBT
Okay.
in the fall prior
Yeah,
to
because this
their
is
work
going to happen
beginning.
until then, right?
Yes, and specifically about hand carving the letters. I'm not convinced, I'm not opposed.
Okay.
I like the concept, but my concern was what he expressed to you after you had pushed him to hand carve, that they would attempt it and could try. I knew that it was going to be, or their belief is it's over the students' heads in hand carving it. And I understand your feeling that if it's slightly hacked, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's a sign out there in a park, and we don't want it to look, my concern is that the acrylic letters are gonna look too modern. So
Yeah.
I share the concern.
Yeah.
It's the easiest solution, and it may wind up being the solution, but if they can try a couple, they're gonna have a big enough piece that they can take a piece off and practice hand carving too.
Yeah, that's the
So
other
we can
thing.
offer
Yeah.
that concept, if you need to hack up the extra, because I'm pretty sure that, because I think you confused them on the last email, the piece they have to buy is considerably larger than the sign.
Yes.
So they're gonna have enough that they can cut it into a couple of pieces and let a couple of students practice hand carving some letters to say, we can't do this, or yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah.
It's okay with us.
And if they messed it up, I think they were just gonna take a very small piece of that large piece of foam and cut it out and use that for the image. So if they carved the letters above and below and they said, oh, that doesn't look right, they could just cut it out and use the image. But what I meant was, and it's kind of nuanced, so it's kind of hard to describe in email, but I was saying, as long as if you just draw the outline of the letters and hand carve it and there's like little gouge, you can see that the hand craftsmanship in the letters. That doesn't detract from the sign. I think it will actually add to it. And it's really, in my opinion, it's not a difficult, I think that would actually be the easiest part. Is it's just kind of, if you can draw in a coloring book, you can carve letters that are drawn on a sign. It's just carving in the lines. So, I mean, and so I don't think it would take that long. I've done it personally myself, and I'm certainly no expert, and it's not that hard. I think the hardest part is actually doing the image. I would imagine carving the image.
Right.
It's more difficult. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was what I was thinking.
So we'll plan on a field trip come September.
Okay, September.
The selectmen reviewed all the warrant articles last week, 2 weeks ago, their last meeting, and they did approve the warrant article for the sign. We did reduce it from $5,000 to $3,000. So it will go to town meeting floor at $3,000 and could be further reduced if we ask, which I think I'm unlikely to do at this point, but I did say 3,000 is grossly more than what BBT has told us it's gonna cost, so I said, take it down to 2,500, and they said, let's take it down to 3,000. I said, that's fine.
Do they need more money to do that letters? If they carve the letters, would that increase the?
Well, my take is if they don't use the acrylic letters, it's gonna cost them less money. But they did say that they are gonna use paints they have on hand, and I said, you're a school, you should be charging us for the paint, even if it's on the shelf.
Right.
Because in theory, you need to replenish that paint for whatever comes next year from somebody else. So, my take is, I'd like to see them increase the cost slightly, but since it's a bid process, it's not legal to do that.
Right.
They bid it, they put their stake in the ground, what they want to charge us for, what's going to cost them, and it's, if we were to throw them an extra $100, I don't think anyone would be upset, but technically, you can't really have them modify their quote after they quoted it unless something has changed on our behalf. And I think the change on our behalf of hand carving, it actually reduces their cost, doesn't increase it.
But labor, would labor increase it or? Well, I guess this is all labor.
That's what you get. You get labor for free. So
Yeah.
It's all the materials you gotta pay for.
Okay.
All right, number 5, Grange Building update. KP Law. The Grange received a letter from the Mass Historical Commission last Thursday or Friday with notifying the 3 items were missed in the application. Yeah, I did the application, and we missed 2 of the 3 at least. One was a letter from the attorney who was hired to review the title on the building. Was supposed to incorporate in his letter a transcription of the boundary description from the deed. We attached the letter and we attached the deed right after it, but the state says, no, you have to actually transcribe what's typed in the deed into the letter. So I transcribed it, emailed it to the attorney the same day he sent his bill, saying, please don't change your bill, but could you copy and paste this into your letter and I'll come pick up a new copy with your signature. So the second item was we were supposed to include a copy of the assessors map. They've gone to the assessor's office twice and apparently not stated our request clearly. We got a 2-page printout of the assessed value and a map picture of where the property is. But they wanted the actual assessor's map that shows the property with all the surrounding parcels. So that was a 5-minute request, and I got that on Monday morning, printed out by our assessor. So we have those 2 in hand. The third item was a letter from the state Grange indicating they will accept a preservation restriction being placed on the building. The letter that they had given us last month did not include those words in the proper fashion. So they were meeting last night, I believe. Kristen said they were holding an executive meeting last night and Kristen had called the gentleman from the Mass Historical Commission in Boston because I was out of pocket yesterday. Got the wording that he wanted, passed it on to the state Grange, and they were supposed to type it up and sign it last night at the meeting. So hopefully in the next 48 hours, we have that letter and Kristen will mail the 3 items back to the Mass Historical Commission, hopefully completing their request of what they wanted. The state received 39 requests against their grant for a total of $2.71 million. Now, the original application instructions said there was approximately $1 million to be available. So whether $1 million can be made into 2, I have no idea. Whether they pass 90% of the applications could suggest that the Grange gets 30 or 35 or $40,000 out of 80. So I'm just speculating. I don't know. None of this has been stated. Or whether they select some in favor of others based on their criteria.
I think that, I would think that Upton would have some advantage where
Never ask for money.
I think the town hall was the last time we asked for something from them from this grant? Did we get money
No,
for the town hall from that grant? No?
no, CPC,
No. So maybe,
they're in the debt to pay for the
I
town.
mean, I can't even remember have we ever had money from that grant?
Not that I know of, no, start.
So you'd think that that would be to our advantage, right?
So I'm the first person to write one of those applications. And I tell you, I'm
Yeah,
the last.
never again. Yeah, I looked at it and said, oh, geez.
We did get a letter from KP Law at the next to the last selectmen's meeting, so somewhere around 4 or 5 weeks ago, when the selectmen reviewed all of the 37 warrant articles that had been submitted for May's town meeting. They had discussed the preservation restriction. They had asked me questions about it, and I says, well, the grant application with the state demands a preservation restriction be placed on the deed prior to any grant money being handed out, if they're accepted. So the state's going to put a big stop sign until you get the preservation restriction put on the deed. So I said, that's already done, and it's all language that follows the state laws and code. So they went and asked KP Law, the town's law firm, what their position was on the use of CPC money on a nonprofit. And they get back a letter which more or less word for word was the same thing the state grant application had asked for, preservation restriction. So there's a whole nother form that's 8 or 10 pages long that the Grange may be given and said, you're going to sign here, there, and everywhere to agree to a preservation restriction and this and that on the building to get CPC funds. I don't see any issue in that since the Grange has already agreed, and the state Grange, hopefully last night, submitted a letter saying they accept a preservation restriction. I will say, I do think the requirement for a preservation restriction, both exterior, interior, and the property, that they're required to be placed on a building like this in perpetuity is extreme. Say we'll require a preservation restriction to put on the property for 25 years or something would be one thing, but to put it on there, because my sense is the Grange won't be here forever. I think it's becoming a smaller and smaller organization, but
It is.
I
Very small.
think the goal of this board was to protect that building.
Right.
Whatever it's used for down the road, it's the oldest schoolhouse, and if we don't protect it, we're not even gonna have that in town. So I think it was a very important thing that we did. So anyways, a letter from KP Law with all the things that a lawyer says you've got to do to use CPC money, and the CPC voted on moving the request for $120,000 to town meeting floor on a 6-1 vote, with Paul Carey, the chairman, voting no. My sense was, and I don't want to speak for him, but the sense was if the Grange had asked for $250,000 or $300,000, he would have been happy with it. That enough was asked for to cover all the repairs that are needed one time.
Mhm.
Although I'm not convinced that was his major concern, but I try to explain that we didn't think it was going to cost that when we started this whole thing back in January. It was my estimate along with Ken Paulson's estimate of what we thought we needed to do. And then the grant application says you must have an architect. So we went and got an architect, and he says, but you got to do this, 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 and this. There's another $100,000. And oh, by the way, to do all that, you've got to hire a contractor who can prove he is paying health care benefits and retirement benefits to his employees. So you, in my opinion, have left it with only the largest contractors are
Right.
going to be allowed to
That are-
be accepted. Anybody can bid, but
Charge.
the only ones that the state
Most.
accept, they're the ones that are going to charge the highest rate. Prevailing wage is not required for a nonprofit, but given what I just said on the other hand, is you're only going to get companies that are paying prevailing wage. So,
Like I would have recommended a
$25,000.
painter that did my home
yeah, exactly.
because they were fabulous and they did such a good job and whatever. But I doubt if they have any of those things.
I'm just afraid that a $20,000 roof job is now a $40,000 roof job, and a $20,000 paint job is a $40,000 paint job, and a $10,000 handicap ramp is a $50,000 handicap ramp, and that's what the architect has said these things are going to cost. So
Yeah.
I tried to explain that this thing evolved as we got into it, and I said we could have waited till next year as Kristen wanted, but my sense was Kristen only said that because he didn't know how to proceed with the process and
Mhm.
how much work it was gonna be. And it's been a lot of work, but you're gonna do it this year, next year, the year after, you're still gonna do it for that grant application.
Who
I've
knows
had,
where any of us will be next year?
Your experience.
Might as well do it.
You have an experience.
yeah, yeah. And my sense was after going through all of it, it may not have been worth it. I don't know. I'm not convinced. We may have raised the cost of doing everything. The cost of the architect and the attorney don't go into the building.
Right.
And I was in fear the whole time of the amount of money that might have to come out of the Granger's pocket to support these items that are part of the restoration work.
Mm.
So anyways, that's where we stand on the Grange. We have to send a letter. Joe Layton is gonna have to send a letter May 5th after the town meeting, if it passes. We need to be prepared for all kinds of questions on the town meeting floor because the selectmen's review was intense. The sign passed with no questions asked. The $25,000 we've requested, there were no questions asked other than, is this something you want every year? And I said, no, it's only something we're asking for once. And then we got to the Grange and it was question after question after question, so.
And I'm sure it's because it's not a town-owned property.
Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. I mean,
Well,
Right.
Paul Flaherty was there for the FinCom and he did indicate that he found out that Plymouth has given CPC money to a nonprofit. And Kristen Paulson found out last week that Acushnet Grange received money from the CPC to do restoration work on that building. So we have a couple more specifics and it's CPC money. It's just a different town's name, but it's the same concept of giving money to a nonprofit to preserve a historic property. All right, anybody have any questions or comments?
So the warrant, was it a warrant? The CPC voted, Paul Carey voted no, but everyone else voted yes.
Everyone else voted yes, it passed by majority vote.
You know, and they give the CPC money many times to churches that aren't built, owned by the towns and,
Now you have a religious concept,
right.
public money, so
Yeah.
this is not, this is strictly a nonprofit
Mhm.
in one of our most historic buildings. Item number 6, 33 Milford Street. I received an email from Amy Bonina, who works in Pat Roach's office, town building inspector, that the interior demolition that was done at 33 Milford Street a month and a half, 2 months ago, and that the building was being put up for sale apparently was not correct. The demolition was done and he was waiting for financing to proceed with renovation, restoration, modification, and completion of his project. And has submitted numerous documents to the building inspector's office, but apparently failed to seek any building permits to do any work. So a stop work order was drafted last Friday, I believe it was, and several boards were asked for their input. I gave the input that I fully supported a stop work order if he didn't have permits. And that the only thing he could then do, they were going to have the police deliver it last Friday afternoon, and that the only thing that the owner could do at that point was cover things with tarps and protect it from weather that was coming in, but to do no more work on the building until he submitted his plans fully and got a building permit to do his restoration.
Sounds like a real rookie. Working on it.
Yes. And then I guess one of the things that they saw in some of the documents is that he's gonna, whether he's building a balcony or doing something in the facade of the building. And I said, we really have no, to my knowledge, we have no control over what he does to that building. He's not tearing it down. So the building will be, the shell of the building will be preserved. Everything will be changed inside and some changes outside, but
That's what we thought was gonna happen to Dr. McKernan's building, remember? When we
Yeah,
voted
yeah.
on that, and the guy came and said, oh, he's gonna
Here it is.
rip it down to the frame and rebuild on the original frame, and that never happened.
We turn around and sold it. You got our permission to turn around and sold it.
Yeah.
The number 7 warrant article for $25,000, the selectmen approved and sent forward to the town meeting floor. So the only question I can recall that they asked was, is this something you want every year? And I said, no, this is something we want for a kitty to be able to do special projects and stuff without the lengthy delay of going to town meeting floor every time we do something.
Like repairing the church roof.
Like repairing the church roof, like maybe doing stone windows on Holy Angels, but that anything we do, we would go to the town manager and board of selectmen prior to doing it to seek their permission and approval. So it would be, we will be hamstrung by, people need their approval to say we want to do this, that, or something else. One of the things that I certainly would like to do that I had on my plate a year ago when I was on the cemetery commission is to find someone that could go into Old First Cemetery and do some restoration of the old gravestones. And that could be a project if we could find someone who's knowledgeable and capable of doing it. That might cost us a couple $1,000 to go in there and fix some of the approximately 15 broken stones. I did read in a report somewhere back then that in 2002, there was vandalism that was done in that cemetery and a number of stones were broken. So I suspect, probably not all of them, but many of them were broken back then. And it certainly does concern me that what is located right next to it, that paintball field, all the people going up in there that have access to that cemetery.
Maureen Byrne had sent me an email, interested in doing some work in the cemetery, and she also was wondering if we could do ground penetrating radar. I think it was, or I could forward that to
She
you.
was very on to that when she was sitting here with us and never got very far with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You talked about that in the cemetery commission, and ground penetrating radar might be appropriate for an active cemetery. If you want to determine if there's some areas with no headstones that never got used, then you want to use them. But I don't quite see the point of figuring out where the graves might be in Old First Cemetery if it's not a headstone. I mean, it's sacred property, and some of the work that I started should be continued to clean it up a little bit more and fix the headstones. But as far as trying to locate where a burial might be that never got a headstone or has lost its headstone, I don't think the Historical Society of the town has any records to say, or I should say the records they have tell us who's buried there. And I don't think there's anything that's ever going to identify that there's, 10 or 20 or 30 other people buried there we don't have names for. So, and ground penetrating radar can be expensive.
Oh, really? I don't know anything about it. So.
Yeah.
Watch a show called Time Team, the British archaeology show that was on for 15 years, and they started airing it here. Every time they go out to find something that was done 2,000 years ago, they take out penetrating radar and a bunch of that. So I've seen all the technologies and how they can be used. It's quite fascinating, but the expense of hiring someone to do it, we had talked about it with purchasing commercial software to manage the cemeteries. And one of the things several of the companies wanted to do was to GPS locate or geo map every grave. Yeah, okay. Well, it's $25,000 an acre, and it's like, so what are you going to do with that information? So I know on
And what is it
on
going to give us?
a map on a computer where a headstone is.
Information.
We're still a small town. I think that's a.
They did ground penetrating radar at Heritage Park. All I found was some sewer pipes.
How much did it cost to do that? You know?
Oh, I forgot now.
Hmm.
It was expensive.
Well, who paid for that? How did that come about?
That came out of the Historical Commission's revolving fund.
That's why the revolving fund is very small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did OSI,
I mean, that's
one OSI.
What did they think they were? The ground penetrating.
I don't know.
Was
I went to the meeting. It was talking over my head. All I saw was gray line.
I mean, that's the
Green with a bunch of lines on it.
most appropriate place to do something like that, to say archaeologically, is there something that was there 5, 6, 700 years ago, other than
Yeah.
the stone?
They didn't take a little section and
But they go in,
they found some bones,
they go into one of our cemeteries.
rabbit bones and
Rabbit bones.
small, somebody had been,
We ate a lot of rabbit.
yeah.
All right, we've gotten a little off,
Yeah,
okay.
topic. All right. Don't be, number 8, Patrick is up. You wait.
I am awake. Absolutely. We're in the midst of spring track season, so definitely if you've noticed my amazing tan, you can probably see it. I have this lovely tan. Fun fact, we're going against Mendon Upton tomorrow, so no big deal. Again, I'm sending my thoughts in advance to Mendon Upton as we take them on the track tomorrow, so fingers crossed. But in regards to social media, out of curiosity to the group, what are your thoughts on if we established a TikTok?
I don't know anything about TikTok, so I can't give you much. Go ahead with it or whatever, so.
I think, give us an idea.
The only one that.
What you would do on TikTok.
I'm just thinking of different like avenues of just kind of reaching more people. Definitely the other thing we can think about is a Twitter as well, because definitely it's another way where we can send instant access. Yes, I know all social media basically does the same thing, has the same bells and whistles in regards to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of those. But I was just curious if we were interested in kind of branching out into other kind of streams of the social media world.
Do you think it would address more younger people? And do you think that there would be interest in our group because of that?
A little bit. I think we could probably also get not just say like teenagers, people that are, like student wise, but definitely the demographic of those that are in their 20s and 30s definitely have at least a Twitter, because for them it's quick. It's definitely like looking at the research. The average person, when they pop their phone up in their 20s and 30s, they'll look at something that's less than 140 characters. And it's just something that I've been looking at, in regards to what we've been doing on the Historical Society Facebook page, our Facebook page, and just thinking of what other ways, to keep people's attention span, whether it's something instant. The other thing with like a hashtag that makes things easy, I know talking about like what Tom was mentioning in the letter, if you have something like a catchy hashtag that also gets the attention of people, you can also click on it and you can see everyone that's either liked it or has, posted it somewhere. So it kind of we can kind of track who's been sending things out or who's been kind of advocating on our behalf.
Does this require financial investment?
Nope,
No.
It's all free. But
Does
if
it
we
require a lot more time on your part?
No, because one of the things that I've been slowly starting to do is I've been recruiting students to also assist in this area. And one of the things is they basically sign a contract, like basically an expectations thing, that if they had access to, I've been playing around at my school with them taking access to one of our social media pages. And the thing is, if you have students in charge of it, you can also kind of see what they've posted. So they can't like hide things. They can't post something derogatory, because also as the admin, I can also see what they post before they put it out.
Uh-huh.
And if, let's just say we get 50,000 subscribers or a huge following, that means we get ad money.
Well, so is this something that if you jump into it and you find that it's not proving to give us the information or the contacts, that we thought it would, could we jump out of it?
Yep.
Okay.
Instantly, it's fast, it's painless. We would, not go out with like a bang. It would be very just
Quietly shut the door.
yeah. There's no
What are you gonna put on?
small things. Like for starters, I know we've got town meeting coming up, so I would be like promoting our town meeting. I would be like promoting just basically small things to kind of gauge interest. Some of it would be just some satirical things, nothing that's too in the face. A while back, I put up a meme about our historical society friends about not touching things, and I know that was a hit with some people.
You know, people that like to touch everything.
I think you're very clever about all of this stuff, and I would be okay with it. It would be interesting to see how many people would jump on to this and be interested in it.
But it's just, again, just kind of experimenting with things because we have the ability to do that. Where it's, I mean, I've also been kind of seeing what other historical commissions have been doing. We would also be one of the first in the state to kind of do this. So that's also something that's kind of, excuse the pun, another, feather in our hat for Upton when it comes to doing things first. Because I don't know about you, but like, I'm sorry. I'm in ancient Rome. I'm teaching ancient Rome right now. So we've been talking a lot about firsts in class, and the Romans were the first to do this. So think of this is another frontier that we could potentially conquer for historical commissions across the state.
I would propose that you bring us a specific proposal for next month's meeting and maybe give us 3 or 4 or 5 things that you would put on whichever platform you think would be the place to start, and then we could have a vote.
Sounds good.
Did you ever get to put anything up on our Facebook page on the Grange?
To be honest, no, that my plan is to start being better with that. My apologies on that.
Well, your apologies, but the Grange is facing a vote in 3 weeks at town meeting floor for restoration of that building, and that if we were to get 1 or 2 or 3 people more to go there and vote in favor of it, it would definitely be a plus. So anything that you could do in the next week or 2 would certainly be a bonus for them.
Then I will make that my directive tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Patrick?
That's it, boss.
Okay. I'm not your boss, and don't call me sir. I was.
Got it.
All right. Upton's 300th anniversary. Again, I'm leaving it here as a placeholder unless there's something you'd like to say. We were going to do it at the May meeting, but we can.
I still just have the outline.
And I meet with you and go over that and see what.
As far as the fundraising, you just the ideas of what other kind of towns were doing, like dinners and bands, and then we mentioned last time sweatshirts, but I don't know how much money that's. A lot of those, and then selling them halfway decent price. So
It's a depot.
And it might be something that,
yeah.
It's the last town that we know of had a 200, 250, 300, 350.
Just mending that.
Mendon, Northbridge, they just have a big celebration last year. Milford.
Grafton is the same, celebrating is the same year we will be.
Oh, really?
Ours in June, Grafton celebrating is, I believe, in September.
I'd like to see,
Are they both
when we
300s?
do it, I'd like to see it done in June. Because when we did the 250th, we did it in September to coordinate with like Heritage Day. The parade was in September. The birthday's in June. Yeah, the big parade, the big parade. When my son
It was in June, I remember, it rained.
Yeah, right.
Oh, it was in June.
That was in June. I thought it was in
No,
September.
we're saying Labor Day weekend or something. But I don't care when it's done. Weather's always.
Yeah, right. Can't order the weather.
All right, well, you two get together. I don't know if Russ wants to join you, and we can have a more detailed discussion on the next meeting in May.
Okay. So it's at that point, you still want kind of like the rough draft type of thing, or do you want just ideas?
Rough draft ideas, whatever.
Okay,
We can have a roundtable discussion.
okay.
We are 12 years away, so way ahead of.
We are aware that.
But if we have a framework we can pass on down the line at this board.
But the board's gonna change
Then-
in 12 years, I'm pretty sure.
Well, of course.
So, well, I appreciate having.
If this is something that can be passed down, then at least they've got the framework for the ideas, the research that you guys have done. And there's no reason not to do that. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to discuss this evening?
No, all right.
Yeah,
You got
Seems like we
most of that?
discussed it all.
It is a wonderful transcription. I don't know if you can get access to this transcription. I didn't
Yeah.
realize.
I was thinking about that, yeah, I wonder if I could steal that.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
One of the thoughts, if I don't forget, I'm sure I won't, I'm going to be out of town for the entire month of June. One of my thoughts is if we move the May meeting further out by a week or two, have no June meeting and then have a July meeting, middle of July, and maybe skip the August meeting. So we have one meeting in the summer and then come back in September. Does anybody have any thoughts and wishes on that?
Oh, excuse me.
I like that idea.
It sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
So let's do this. Let's do second Wednesday in May would be the 10th, but we could do the 17th or the 24th of May. Does anybody have a preference? Let's do the 17th of May for our next meeting.
Yeah.
No meeting in June. On July 19th. And then go back to second Wednesdays in September, which would be September 13th.
No meeting in August.
No meeting in August, no meeting in June. Yeah, second Wednesday, in September. I have 17 hotel rooms for 21 nights in June, every one in a different city, in a different state.
You go down and adventure.
My wife's idea, we're driving to Las Vegas by way of Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Statesville, North Carolina, Amaricus, Georgia, Vicksburg, Mississippi.
They're going south, that's out there.
Somewhere east of Oklahoma City, I don't remember the name of the town, to Amarillo, Texas, Gallup, New Mexico, Las Vegas,
Oh,
3 nights, Green River, Utah, Denver for a week,
Green River, Utah's beautiful.
Grand Banks, Nebraska, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, Escanaba, Michigan,
Well, you're
North
going
Bay,
once.
Ontario, and
This is all in June?
all in June.
You-
Let's go see something, she says.
It seems like you need.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, why just choose June? Why don't you go in September when most people aren't doing that? Yeah.
Because I have to factor it around taking care of the grandkids, which she does,
Okay.
taking them to school and
Okay.
around work, and I
Sounds
would
like my
go.
brother.
I would go in September
Yeah,
or October,
Mm.
but it's June when everybody's going to be on the road.
right.
Gosh, only knows what we're going to run into. But I got 13 hotel rooms for $550. I got
Wow.
3 nights in Vegas for $0.
Wow.
No taxes, no fees, no room charge in the Tropicana, and 2 nights in Montreal for $1,000. So Montreal costs twice what the other 13 nights. Crazy. All right, Patrick, we will see you next month. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Did we adjourn or make a motion?
A motion to adjourn.
I'll make a
Second.
motion to adjourn.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Bye.
All those opposed? Good evening.